Hello?
Okay, welcome everybody. We're so excited for the first tasting of 2022. And we're so excited to have you here. And so tonight we have three special guests with us. We have Howard Friedman, who used to work at Calvert Woodley and now runs his own import company. We also have Paco Pulido, who will present the last two wines he works with Howard. And then we have Ramon Canals, who is the winemaker.
There, picture-wise.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to mute everybody.
Yeah, okay.
Hold on one second. We're just muting everybody. Again, if you could mute yourself as soon as you come in, that would be great. Okay, so tonight for the tasting order, if you want to go ahead and pour your first glass, we're starting with the Ramon Canals Brut Reserva. This guy. So you can pour yourself a glass, and then we are going through to the Rosé, and then to the Chardonnay, and finishing on the Ribera del Duero by Trus. We also, if you bought at Calvert Woodley, the cheese and meat to pair with the tasting, the tetilla is what you would drink with or eat with the two Cavas and the Chardonnay. And then the manchego is what you would have with the Trus Ribera del Duero. Today, we're going to try to keep everyone muted so that the speakers have enough time to get everything in. We have a jam-packed tasting for you today. So if you'd like to ask any questions, please write that in the chat and I will be sure to ask our speakers. And at the end, we'll open the floor to everybody so that they can all answer any questions that you have. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to pass it over to Howard.
I'm trying to get the phone so it doesn't ring up here. I figured that it hasn't rung all day and it just took the opportunity to do that. Okay, are you ready to go? Okay, let me make sure I know what I'm doing here. Okay, good evening, everyone. As Jen said, I have been at Calvert Woodley. I guess it's been about 8 or 9 years since I was there, but I was there for 10 years as one of the guys on the floor, salesman. I probably know some of you. And I fell in love with Spanish wines, and it's just become a kind of a wonderful thing for me. Going to that country has been fantastic. Well, let's start off, so I don't waste the time of the guys who are doing actual tasting. This is a map of Spain, of course. You see France up here, Portugal here, and the Mediterranean. All these different colored spots on the map are different growing areas in Spain. They're called DOs. And you see the ones that are circled. You have Penedès, which is where the Cava comes from, Navarra, which is where the Chivite comes from, and Ribera del Duero.
Howard, your volume went down a little bit. I'm not sure.
Let me get a little closer here, turn it up. Okay, we good? Okay. It's an interesting country because there are 4 languages spoken here, 4 distinct languages. They are not dialects, they are languages. In fact, Ramon in all of Catalonia speaks Catalan, a very different language than Castellano, which is spoken all over the country, and in other countries where Spanish is spoken. Up in the north, around the Basque country, there's the Basque language, which no one knows the history of. And for a long while, it was not a written language. And for a long while, when when I think his name, the dictator, Franco ruled Spain, that language was not allowed to be spoken. Then you have Gallego, which is spoken on the west coast of Spain in Galicia. And again, it's similar to Portuguese, but it is not. It's not a dialect. It has its own dictionary. All these areas have their own dictionary. Down here in La Mancha, the purple area, it is the largest single growing area in the world. I think it's 150,000 acres. And most of what they grow there is a grape called Iran, which is used to make brandy and cognac. not cognac, brandy, and vermouth. I'm going to turn it over to Ramon now. After one more thing, Cava is like champagne, the word champagne. The French don't like that word used for anything but true champagne. It comes from a place called Champagne. And Cava, as the Spanish name it, is what comes from Penedès. It's produced in many areas of Spain, but only in the people in Penedès believe it's the best and the only one to truly be called Cava. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let Ramon take over from here. Okay, Ramon?
Okay, hello everyone. Good night from Spain right now. So I'm Ramon Canals and will show you two wines tonight. So a little bit of the presentation, who we are. We are a family company founded in 1903 in a small town that's called Castellví-de-Rosanes, that is near Barcelona. So my name and my father's name is Ramon Canals. So it is the brand of the two Cavas that you have today. So myself, I'm a pharmacy, I'm a winemaker, and I have some international experience about the sparkling wine. So I work in Champagne, as you can see, in United States. I work in Domaine Carneros or Domaine Chandon, California. I work in Australia, New Zealand, and England. Always to get experience to make good sparkling wines. So a little bit where we are. So our region is the Penedès. The Penedès is in the northeast of Spain. So you have the map, where is France, Italy, and Spain. So we are close to Barcelona, around 30 kilometers from Barcelona. And all the region below is the Penedès region. So this is a typical view from Penedès. So these are our vineyards from Xarel·lo. Xarel·lo is one of the grapes that one of our Cavas that you're tasting, the white, the Reserva Numerada white, the 50% of this product is made from this vineyard. A little bit more about the Penedès. So the Penedès is the same area that you see before on the left hand. So we have the three areas. We have the lower Penedès that is near to the coast, the central Penedès that is in the middle, and the upper Penedès. So we have three different regions, and depending on the region, we have different grape varieties. So normally in the lower Penedès, we grow the Macabeu and Xarel·lo. In the central Penedès, we grow the Xarel·lo and Garnacha. And upper Penedès, we grow the Parellada and the Pinot Noir from for the Rosé. A little bit from for our history. So my grandfather was the founder of the company in a family house that is in that small town that I told you before, that is Castellví-de-Rosanes, near Barcelona. And this is the first cellar where he made the first liters of wine. After my grandfather, when my parents got married, in 1975, they started to make the first bottle of Cava. So this is my dad, and this is my mother. And right now, my sister and I, we are running the company. So I'm in the winemaking area, and my sister is in the management area. So a little bit to talk about the products that you have today for tasting. So now you see the three main grape varieties for Cava. That is the Reserva Numerada made. You can see the grape varieties here. Xarel·lo, Macabeu, and Parellada, so are the ones that are on the picture here. And below, you see the Garnacha and the Pinot Noir. Always we use hand-picked grapes, so it's not machine pick. As Howard told you, the Cava is made with the same process of the champagne, so the methode champenoise or methode traditional. So it's the one fermentation from grape juice to still wine, and a second fermentation inside the bottle from still wine to Cava or champagne. So that is the traditional method. So you see the grape varieties in our region. The harvest, it takes in August, September. So you can see here, we pick the grapes, hand-picked grapes always. We press the grapes and we get the juice. And always to make Cava, first we have to make still wine. So we get this juice and we make a first fermentation in the tank, and you can see it on the right hand. So what happened here? So here it's the first alcohol fermentation. What's alcohol fermentation? So you can see very simple here. So we have the juice from the grapes. So we add yeast, and we have the first fermentation to get still wine. So we get the alcohol, the CO2, and other compounds that give aroma and flavor to the wine. So the thing that when we make still wine, we lose the carbon dioxide. That's why the still wines, they don't have bubbles. So they have carbon dioxide inside because we lose the carbon dioxide during the first fermentation. That process, when we want to make Cava, it's very important to make each variety independently. So if you see here in the label, Xarel·lo, Macabeu, and Parellada, so we press the Xarel·lo, we ferment the Xarel·lo, and we get the still wine from Xarel·lo. The same from the Macabeu and the same for the Parellada. So at the end of the process, we will get something like this. So we can get 3 tanks, for example, one tank with still wine from Xarel·lo, another tank with the still wine from Macabeu, and another tank from Parellada. And the next step is to do the blend. So the blend, in that case, the Reserva Numerada is 50% Xarel·lo, 25% Macabeu, and 25% Parellada. So we make the blend, and we get the base wine to make the future Cava. In that this wine will be the base to make the future Ramon Canals Reserva Numerada. The same for the Rosé, but the Rosé we will change the grape varieties. So you can see later on the label that it says Garnacha and Pinot Noir, but we will take later about this product. So what's the next step to make some Cava or champagne? Second fermentation inside the bottle. So the same bottle that you get. We add the base wine, that is the blend of Xarel·lo, Macabeu, Parellada. We add the yeast to ferment, and we add sugar to make a second fermentation inside the tank. And we use a provisional cork, a crown cap and plastic cap. It's not a cork, so it's a metallic and plastic. We stop the bottle and we put underground for the second fermentation. Second fermentation in each bottle. So it happened the same. So on the yeast with the sugar that we add, we have the alcohol, carbon dioxide, and other compounds. So the thing that right now we have, the bottle is closed and the CO2 remains inside the bottle. That's why the Cava champagne have the bottles. So in resume, when we make the still wine, we lose the carbon dioxide, and when we make the second fermentation inside the bottle, we keep the carbon dioxide, and that's why the Cava has the bubbles. The next step, when the second fermentation is finished, so it's the aging. We left the bottle some time with the yeast, depending on the cava that we have. If you get the Ramon Canals bottle, you see Reserva. What means Reserva? You can see here. Reserva means more than 18 months of aging inside the bottle. So like this, 18 months, at least. So depending on the vintage, could be 20, 24, 26. You know, normally one of the important things that Howard likes a lot, that all the Ramon Canals that you get in US are RD. RD, it means recently disgorged. So we prepare the order when Howard sent us the order. We don't keep the bottles on the warehouse. So we keep the bottles underground. So
let me add something to that, Ramon. I don't mean to suggest that this wine, the Cava, is as good as Bollinger, but it goes through the same process. Bollinger RD, that costs a couple $100 a bottle, goes through the exact same process that this does. RD, recently disgorged, or récemment dégorgement, is a very important part of the process to make great champagne or Cava. Okay, sorry.
Well, actually, I'm jumping in as well because we have a great question or two questions from someone that's on the same topic. Mitchell asked, the production of fine Cava wines such as yours appears just as careful and costly as that from Champagne. How are you able to sell them for a fraction of the cost of most champagnes? Because
the price of the grapes are much lower than Champagne. Champagne, the grape growers, they put a very high price. Normally, in Champagne, the companies pay around 5-6 euros per kilo. And here in Spain, we are paying 50 cents per kilo. That's the main difference of the cost of the production, you know. And after you have to pace the grapes, keep the bottles for a long time, that it means that it's a higher cost to keep more money underground, and after you have to sell for a higher price. That's the main difference. But the quality price of the Cava is one of the best sparkling wines in the world. So I work in England. The sparkling wine in England is very expensive. I work in Australia, expensive as well, but the quality price that Cava has right now, it's almost impossible. You have the Prosecco, but the Prosecco from Italy is the second fermentation inside the tank. It's not a traditional method. And what's our question?
So
you told me you have two. You have two questions.
Yes,
no?
I have two questions. So the next question was, how are you responding to the new regulations over the labeling of aged Cava wines, Reserva, Grand Reserva, etc.?
So we have a lot of controls. So one of the controls that you have here, you have the seal in all the bottles. And now the DO, yes, that is a good question. That it's maybe someone that it's very interesting with the sparkling wine. Yeah, the new regulation of Cava is changing. So we will put on all the labels the origin of Cava. So if it's Cava from Barcelona, from another region, so but we have 2 years to change everything, you know. But yeah, it's a new regulation. But about the aging, the best guarantee is the seal that you have here. It's okay?
Yes, we got one more question. It said, are there restrictions on what grape types are allowed in Cava? Is it a more recent development that red grapes are allowed to make a rosé Cava?
To make a white Cava, we have 5 varieties right now. We have the Xarel·lo, Macabeu, and Parellada. So the 3 that I showed you before. And we have the Pinot Noir with Blanc de Noir and Chardonnay. And for the rosé, we have the Garnacha, Pinot Noir, Trepat, and Monastrell. that are the only grape varieties that we have allowed to make Cava.
Okay.
Okay? That's okay?
Yep, I think we're good to keep going. Thank you so much.
We want to taste the wine.
Okay. And just to finish, that different that when we taste the Ramon Canals, it's a reserve. So what happened when we take longer the bottle with the yeast, you will get more flavors from the yeast. Not only like a fruity Cava, like the only fruit. So we have some yeasty notes that it comes from the aging. And the carbon dioxide during the aging, it's more integrated and you have more balance and more complexity in the bottle. So you can see here the yeast. And at the end, that is some pictures from the winery. To remove the yeast, we use the pupitres. So it's the really when you you put the bottle from here upside down to remove the yeast. And when we have the bottle upside down, so this is a picture of my father and I, we freeze an egg. We freeze an egg to remove the yeast, and we make the disgorge. And after the disgorge, we say that if the Cava is a Brut nature, Brut, or semi-sec. So all of the Cavas that we will taste today are Brut. Brut, it means that they have a little bit of sugar to get a more balance in the product. Okay? So we can taste the one now. Do you have any questions?
I don't see any questions in the chat, so you can go ahead and taste the wine.
Oh, okay, so the first one is the Ramon Canals Reserva Numerada. That I think that some of you have. First of all, cheers, everyone. So here it's more than midnight in Spain. So the Reserva Numerada, it's a Cava Reserva. So it means that it's aged on lease more than 18 months for lease, for the low, but for this bottle, it's more than 24 months. And the blend, as you see on the screen, it's a blend of Xarel·lo, Macabeu, and Parellada. It's a Brut with 6 grams of sugar per liter. And all of them are RD. So you can see the disgorgement date behind the bottle. So the Ramon Canals Reserva Numerada is a Cava. So one of the things that for Cava, that is the Cava is a wine that you can drink for the whole meal, for the starter, the aperitif, or the main course. So not only for the parties. You know, it's a very, you can use the Cava for the whole meal. So all you have, you can see that the Ramon Canals is a very fresh Cava. Mainly, you can the nose, you can feel some white fruit. The red fruit is very typical from Xarel·lo. And the freshness from the Parellada, and some yeasty notes for the aging. So it's very fresh, clean. And remember that you can drink the Ramon Canals for the whole meal, not only for parties. No? And when you taste, you see that it has a very good balance. Clean after taste, you can feel more white fruit, a little bit of citrus notes, but it's very clean and easy to drink Cava. So I told you that it has, normally all our Bruts, we use 6 grams of sugar per liter to get a good balance. hopefully you enjoy. You can feel that it has a tiny bubbles because right now you are drinking the vintage 2016. That is another question that is another thing that is very important. So the Ramon Canals is vintage dated. No, all the Cavas are vintage dated. So the Ramon Canals are Reserva, vintage dated, and RD. So recently this gorge when Howard Friedman sent us an order. Isn't it, Howard? Is it right, Howard?
Yes, that's right. Just a reminder that both these wines go wonderfully with shellfish, with Asian foods, with the brunch type things, smoked salmon, those kinds of things. It's a perfect accompaniment to all of it.
Yeah, with pasta, rice, we have a white kind of food with Cava. With some wines like you will taste with Paco are more for another kind of food, but the thing that with Cava, it's you can start with the Cava and finish the meal with the Ramon Canals Numerada Cava.
Somebody loves it with fried chicken, absolutely. Perfect with
Good. So we have here in Catalonia, it's very typical on Sunday to drink Cava and fried chicken because the acidity it's very nice because it cleans the palate. So let's go for the next one. The next one is the Reserva Rosé. So this one is Reserva as well. So it's more than 18 months on the list, and is made with Garnacha and Pinot Noir. The thing how we make the Rosé Cava is that before the first fermentation, when we make the wine, we press the grape and we leave the grapes with the skin to get the rosé color. So we have some skin contact before the first fermentation from the grape juice to the still wine, and after when the juice has the rosé color, we make the first fermentation from the grape juice to a still wine, and after the second fermentation inside the bottle as the first one. Okay. This one is a vintage 2017 and is 50-50, 50% Garnacha and 50% Pinot Noir. So the Garnacha, it's grown in the central Penedès and the Pinot Noir in the upper Penedès. That is a cooler region. So in this wine, you can feel more red fruit. With the Ramon Canals Numerada, you can feel more white fruit. It's a little bit more delicate. And I love this for example, as Howard told you before, like with smoked salmon and with oysters as well. But as the other one is very fresh, clean, and it has a little bit of yeasty notes. For me, it has more yeasty notes with the other one that is more red fruit notes.
There was a question about the cheeses. I would say the tortilla would go with the Brut and the manchego with the rosado. A little more because you have a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of strawberry in the rosado, which I think.
Yeah, in the mouth, you can feel that it's a very clean, fresh, tiny bubbles, very good aftertaste. And I like this style because they are very clean. So that is very important with Cava, the freshness and the clean and the cleanness, you know. And these products you can pair with almost everything. You know, with the starter, pasta, rice, seafood. You know, not only for the parties. That's why it's very important.
Let me interrupt for just a moment. Ramon, please, let's move along so we can stay on track with the time. Okay? Thanks.
Okay, beautiful. I finished.
Oh, right, and right. I forgot. It is Valentine's Day. Why? How could I forget that on Monday? This would be perfect for.
Oh yeah, that Rosé is perfect for Valentine's.
Might go with chocolate. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. So okay, I'm finished. So hopefully you enjoy both cavas. Maybe you taste before, but thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, if you would stop share, and I'm going to go back to share.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back to the first screen that I did. So again, we are here in Penedès, where this wine comes from. And now we're going to go to Navarra. An interesting difference. Somewhere it should be, here we go. Okay, Navarra. Navarra is the only DO in Spain, the only region in Spain that is a chartered community, because back in the days of the French occupation in Spain, this charter was granted to establish Navarra. It is, as you see, in the north east of Spain, almost near the Pyrenees, just to the east of Rioja. And along, as you see here, the Ebro River. The Ebro River is one of the longest in Spain, if not the longest. And it's interesting that in Spain, there is only one navigable river in the whole country. It goes from Cadiz to Sevilla, and that's the only one. All the other rivers in Spain are too shallow for commercial shipping. Okay. So we talked about the community dating back to 1512. When the phylloxera struck in 1891, there were about 50,000 hectares. By 1896, 5 years later, 700 remained. 700 hectares out of 50,000. The grapes that can be planted there, actually this, because of its French heritage, there are many of the traditional vinifera grapes, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, that are planted, Chardonnay, that are planted in Navarra. And there are white grapes, Chardonnay, which is one of the few regions where Chardonnay is grown, Garnacha Blanca, Malvasillas, and Viura, which is also Macabeo, same grape. There are 100 bodegas and 7,000 growers. So lots of land, lots of people growing grapes, and you can see where a lot of this wine gets sold in bulk to people who want to have wine from this region. Paco, you want to continue from here? You want to say anything about this, and then we'll go on? So I will stop sharing and let you go through it. Nope, Paco, you with me?
Hi there.
Yes, there we go. Okay.
All right, so I'm based in the US, actually in Tennessee, Nashville, but I've been working with CBD for a few years. I'm gonna make it brief, just give you like a little bit of a few facts about the region, the winery, and then we can talk about the wine. As Howard mentioned, Navarra is north part of Spain, close to the border, I mean, right by the border with France. So you get a lot of the Atlantic influence from France when it comes to the weather, from the ocean, and it's kind of a dry area as well. So you get a little bit of the main characteristics of the dry areas from Spain, but also an Atlantic influence to it. Navarra is just contiguous to Rioja, so there's a lot of similarities when it comes, especially to the reds, in terms of the style and everything. But one thing that defines, I think, like Navarra wines is the fact that over the past couple of centuries, especially in the 19th century, there was a lot of influence from winemakers from France that would cross the border and would come to source wines like bulk wines, basically, until the 1940s from Spain that would end up in France. So along with that, they brought a lot of know-how and knowledge about how to make wine. So the wines and the style of Navarra wines are clearly influenced by French style. I mean, by French winemakers. So also is one of the few regions in Spain that grows mostly like international varietals, like French varietals, like Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Merlot, and it's known basically because of their Rosé wines. But in the past, I would say 40-some years, there's been a great improvement in the whites and the reds made there. So you'll see like it's kind of in the crossroads of France and Spain. So you'll see a lot of things that will maybe remind you of French wines, but would also some characteristics that are definitely Spanish. So I think they are very interesting wines, unique in that sense. The other thing I want to mention about the winery, Chivite is one of the few wineries in Europe that is still working, and that it was founded in the 17th century. So it's been around for a while. So the family, I think it's like, I don't know what generation, but there's obviously goes like a lot of generations back to the 17th century. And it started as usual in Navarra for mostly bulk wines, and they improved their quality back in the 40s, in the 1940s, and they saw a huge improvement of the quality of the wines, winemaking, and everything, and a vineyard care in the 70s. So Chivite is maybe the most or the best known winery from Navarra. It's in the lower part of Navarra where the best quality of the grapes are grown, very close. It's right by the border with La Rioja. So that's what I was mentioning before, especially in the reds, you see a lot of similarities with the Rioja style. But what we're trying tonight is, what we're tasting tonight is Chardonnay. If there's one region in Spain that for still wines is known for Chardonnay, it's Navarra. So usually, it's not a huge production, but again, like I said, the French influence, I think it's behind the fact that they kept growing Chardonnay grapes for the past 80, 90 years. And the wine that we're tasting, which is Legardeta Chardonnay, it's fermented 50%, 50% in stainless steel tanks. And it's on the lease for 5 months. So now, what that makes that winemaking process when you taste the wine is that it adds a lot of viscosity to the wine. I mean, it's got a lot of density, and that makes the wine like way more complex. Plus, it adds durability to the wine. I mean, we're talking about even though it's a white wine, it can easily last 3, 4 years, 5 years in really good shape. Which is not common when it comes to not most, but like the most common Spanish whites. So it's a wine that you can keep for a couple of years; it still would be in pretty good shape, and at the same time you get that viscosity from the winemaking, like I said, like the lease for 5 months, but also you get the thing that is I think is more like Spanish-like, which is the acidity. I think it has very nice acidity. It's a wine that is very refreshing, even though it's 2020. And I think it's a wine that goes great with basically seafood, but because of the viscosity, also like some kind of cheeses or cold cuts. I think it's a great wine for that. So I don't know what you guys think, but I think it's a perfect wine for dinner, and it can also go with maybe like roasted chicken and stuff like that, or salmon. And I think it kind of has like the best of both worlds. It has that barrel fermentation that gives like complexity and density to the wine, and that refreshing aftertaste of the climate. I mean, like the climate provides for the Chardonnay in Navarra.
Hey, Paco, we actually received a question more at the beginning of the presentation of the Chivite about only 700 hectares survived and how terrible that was. How did they rebuild from that?
Well, they mostly, there was, after that, in the beginning of the 20th century, there was like a reform, it was like more like a political thing that was the agricultural, I mean, it's a very agricultural area, Navarra, so it's basically like a huge garden, like basically Rioja is, so you get a lot of vegetables and a lot of grapes. So one of the things was like to improve the quality of life of people living there. They were like helping everything to develop the agricultural system there. So a lot of people benefited from that. And then there was a lot of replanting, obviously. So what you see from that, when a lot of the area that was replanted, is that there was a lot of garnacha was added, which is also one of the main grapes in the area. It's between Aragon and La Rioja, so you see a lot of I would say like 40 to 50% of the production in a given year is garnacha. So a lot of more like indigenous grapes, although Grenache, I mean, like French, that's like debatable, but we think like Grenache is like Spanish grapes. So I would say like that there was a more intense focus on the local grapes, even though they kept the Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Chardonnay. And Chardonnay actually is still, for the oldest wineries in the region, is still one of maybe the main grape for white wines.
It's an interesting question because I'm sure you all know that you can't just plant a vine and start making wine from those grapes. It takes 5 to 7 years before you can begin making wine from the grapes that you harvest. So the whole plant, once philosopher was dealt with, it took years for the harvest to get to the point where more wine could be made on a commercial basis. Whoops, sorry.
Yeah, and then the last thing I want to mention about the wine, it's obviously like hand harvested. It's estate bottle. It's this estates in particular, like around 20-25 miles south of Pamplona, where the bulls like running in the streets is, like the famous event in Spain, and it's all like family owned as well. So it's a kind of a limited production. Actually, Chivite has like plenty of Chardonnay that they use for like a lower kind of not quality. I don't want to put it that way, but like more like affordable type of wine. But I think like this wine for the price, I think it's a home run.
Okay. Again, you should pay attention to the fact the 2019 vintage, what Calvert Woodley has is all there is. They're already switched over to 2020.
Correct.
And a different style. Interesting. You can read it. And the weather has a lot to do with that, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're at the red grape for this evening from Ribera del Duero. It comes from the region, Ribera del Duero, a DO, Denominación Origen, that follows the Duero River, which starts here in Spain, but goes all the way to the west coast and into Portugal. It is where port wines grapes are grown. Aranda de Duero is kind of the commercial center. And the winery we're talking about here, Trus, is located right around here between Penafiel and Roa, okay? Only Tempranillo can be planted, but if you have vines that were mostly Merlot or Malbec that were planted before that came to be, you can keep them. But otherwise you cannot plant anything but Tempranillo. Another thing about the region is very high. As a result, it's one of the regions that suffers most when there's frost. You get 15 to 20 degree temperature changes between day and night, diurnal temperature changes. So in the day, in the summer, it can be over 100. but it cools down enough at night that the grapes don't shrivel. The deal was established in 1982, and that came about. Our good friend Robert Parker had a lot to do with the emergence of this region, because back then was Vega Sicilia, one of the premier wineries in Spain, and only maybe 4 or 5 different wineries, but Vega Sicilia was the most prominent. But it took Alejandro Fernandez, who found land in, we're going to go back to this, but in Pescara, and you can see the chalk in the soil here. He found this particular part of Spain, a part of that Rio, Ribera del Duero, where chalk dominated. And you can see in some areas, the chalk is so heavily a part of the soil that you can't even grow anything in that soil. But it led to a special flavor in the wine, which Parker called, he called it the, what do you call it? The Bordeaux of Spain. Actually, it was Palmer and I've forgotten. You know, it's been so long since I've dealt with French wine. But nevertheless, that's what brought it to the fore. And once that happened, it went from about 30 wineries to about 300 or over these days. Okay.
All right. So just to add a few things about what Howard just mentioned. Yeah, Ribera del Duero is one of the quality regions in Spain. I would say like where people who look for wines that are high quality and at the same time kind of robust go for. In just to make it like short, for Trus, it's also family owned. Everything they make is 100% Tempranillo, like Howard mentioned. And for the Crianza, it's usually vineyards that go from 20 some years old to 40. So you see a lot of grapes that are meant to be aged. So even though it's a Crianza, I think like when you guys will taste the wine, you will see that it's got a lot of structure. It's a wine that can easily be drank like 6-7 years after it was harvested, like perfectly fine. So there are wines that are meant to last. And but there's nothing like a wine that is meant to last, and you can drink it right away, right? So I think that that's a good thing about this wine, that it's it has a lot of versatility. So to me, the thing about Trus and basically all the wines that Howard actually carries is just that the wines actually show where they come from. So you'll see in the Trus Crianza a lot of minerality, a lot of a fruit that it's powerful, but it's not like overwhelming. It's not you know, like a fruit bomb or anything like that. So it's it actually shows what Ribera del Duero is about. I mean, it's wines that have power, that are muscular, but not overwhelming. They have like, I think, like a high degree of elegance. Talking about pairings, I mean, I like this wine on its own, but it goes from something that it could be, I don't know, having a burger or hot dog, like watching the Super Bowl or something like that on Sunday, to eating steak, cured cheeses. I think it's a lovely wine with food, and it's truly enjoyable bottle. Because one thing that I like about wines is that even though obviously you can talk about the complexity, the soil, and everything, that where they come from, it is great when you have a glass and you want a second one. And I think this wine actually calls for that. I mean, you have a glass and you don't have enough. I mean, you want to have another one with to finish. Something that Ramon said before, that I think it's good when, you know, when you feel like a wine, you're going to start like having like the starters with it, and you can finish, you know, after dessert with it. I think that says a lot about wine. I mean, that you are really enjoying it. And I think this wine actually fits that kind of profile. So Let me get rid of this first.
Let me add something about the growing areas here in the rest of Spain. There are basically 3 different ways to grow grapes in Spain. The first is pergolas out in the west in Galicia, and they do it on pergolas because it rains so much there in green Spain that the idea is to hang the grapes down on the pergola so that they can dry out. The second is embasso, like a goblet shape, and that means that the wines are not on wires as you normally see in France or in California, but they basically are a bush or a goblet shape. They obviously vines like that cannot be hand-picked. They must be, cannot be machine-picked. They're all hand-picked, and they are the oldest vines in Ribera del Duero, the oldest vines in all of Spain. It's interesting that what you see here is an air vent for a winery that's below ground, where the barrels are kept for aging and the fermentation takes place, and they have to have a way to refresh the air, and this is how they do it. So sometimes when you drive down the highway, you will see these cones look like beehives along the highway that are air vents for what's below them. And speaking of that, let me go back a couple of slides here. Yeah, here. Most of the better vineyards are starting from Aranda de Duero here. I should really do this kind of stuff here. From Aranda de Duero west along the Duero River to Penedès and finally to Valladolid. This road is like the Route 1 in Napa, with all the wineries located along that road. And here it's the N122, I think, if I remember. The wineries are on either side. The Pescara region is up here near Roland, but Vegas City is located along the edge here, south of the river, along with another very famous winery called Paco Pulido, right near the town of Penedès. But it's interesting that the man who was the winemaker in the original Vegas City wines, why can't I think of his name? In any event, he started a winery outside of the DO, and the reason he did it was because he wanted the freedom to do what he wanted to do with the grapes and the land. Because I visited with him once and asked him about that, and he said that is why I asked him why he chose that particular piece of land, since he certainly was wealthy enough to buy anywhere. But he chose that land so that he could do what he wanted. Like the garagistas in France and in California, he wanted to be free from the aging restrictions and other things that control the DO. In fact, the DO, this region, Ribera del Duero, was asked to be a DOC. There are only 2 of them in Spain, Rioja and Priorat, right? In Catalan, excuse me, in Catalonia. But they turned it down because they didn't want the control that it took to get to that DOC. You know, sometimes, like here in the United States, control is just too much. People don't want to deal with it. Now we're going to be tasting Trus Crianza 2017. And I know Paco will talk about that. But Trus, I was at the winery a couple of years before the pandemic. Trus is an acronym for tierra, for land, roble for oak, uva for grape, and sol for sun. From 40 acres of vines that surround the winery near Pescara del Duero, that's where these grapes come from. And interestingly enough, they use concrete vats for the initial fermentation, which a lot of Spanish vineyards used to do below ground because they had to have a way to keep it cool during fermentation. Oak aging for 12 months, and release 18 months after harvest. So Paco, up to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much else to add. Just taste the wine. Usually, something that I've noticed, I opened it like just 5 minutes ago. You'll see that in the beginning may feel a little bit oaky, but that kind of disappears over time, and it gets more integrated. So what I love about this wine is that it's got the enough amount of oak in the nose, but then in the mouth it's not as strong, and it's really well integrated. It's got, like I mentioned before, what you expect from Ribera del Duero, like nice muscular fruit, but without being extremely sweet or anything like that. So it's got a lot of elegance to it. So it's a mix of fruit and elegance that I think is very interesting. So that's what I said before, that's very versatile, because it can go with a nice steak or something like that, but also it's great with a burger. So I mean, it's I think it goes well with both things. And then it's got the tannins and everything to obviously go well with any kind of meat. I think it's got a really nice long finish for a Crianza. You know, a lot of the Crianza sometimes like fall short on the liver and complexity. And I think this one has a really nice long finish. And again, I think like overall, I think it's a great bottle of wine that sometimes I hate to compare it, like, because it's maybe compare sometimes like pears to apples or something like that, orange to apples. But I think like for people who like certain style of Bordeaux wines or California wines, like the more like more elegant kind of California wines, this would be a wine that could actually interest them. So obviously for people who like European wines, I think it's a great bottle of wine. But I think there's also like people that maybe are a little bit more cautious or afraid of trying Spanish wines. If they like that kind of style of wine, either California wines, like the more like elegant type, or Bordeaux wines, this could be something that they could actually really enjoy. So again, now it's getting late because it's almost like 7 p.m. there in DC. So it's a great wine for dinner. So if you're having some kind of meat or cheese or something like that, it's a great combination with this wine.
Let me add this to that. Sometimes a wine like this and others that are as powerful as these wines from Ribera del Duero and from Rioja and from Priorat, they need so much time open that they're better the next day than they are the first day.
Correct.
I advise this when it comes to drinking wine. For red wines, which are typically drunk at room temperature, that does not mean what our houses are at about 72 degrees. What it means is about 58 degrees, that is cellar temperature, all over France and Spain, or even lower. I once went to France in the heat of summer and went down in the cellars in Saint-Emilion. It was over 100 degrees outside, and at the base of the cellar, you could see your breath. So that's what they're talking about when they talk about cellar temperature. What I recommend for people is with red wine to open it. If you're having dinner that night, you're going to use that wine that you brought home from the store, open it up at noon. Open it up at noon and decant it. I don't care if it costs $15 or $50. Open it up early and let it breathe. And for the last half hour, if you don't have a wine refrigerator, for the last 20 minutes, put it in the refrigerator so that it cools off. Because warm red wine is all that shows through is the acidity. With white wine, it is the opposite. Most people store white wine in the refrigerator, which is great. But then when you take it out, leave it out for about a half an hour before you drink it. With red wine on the table, it can get it cannot get cooler once it's out of the fridge. It can only get warmer. With white wine, it's the same thing. So take as much time as you do with your food, with the wines that you drink, and you'll find they're much, much better. Okay, so I have always found that the wines from Ribera del Duero are very powerful. Tempranillo is a grape that can produce wine. If it's in the south of France, it can be very light and fresh and pleasant. But from Ribera del Duero, because of the altitude and the soil, they're very powerful wines. They're wines that are made for steak and those kinds of foods that require a wine that is substantial enough to stand up to the flavor. Because after all, the wine is supposed to help balance the meal, not disrupt the meal. It's supposed to go with the food that you taste. Okay. So let's see, what else do we have here? Are we at the end?
Well, yes, a question just came through, a couple questions came through, and they are directed towards Ramon. Who manufactures the caps and the wires for the Cava? And also, are you familiar with the Sabat family?
Yes, I know them. Sabat. S-A-B-A-T. Yeah. We are working with ITE. That is the competition. But yes, we know them. I don't know if Ben. Really? Good.
Oh yeah, he says they are their family.
Good. From Hite or Sabat?
I think Sabat. I believe it's a Sabat family that they
It's
are.
a small world. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Sabat. Okay. Good.
Well,
very nice. Small world.
Well,
Yeah,
I really,
Sabat.
I wanted, before Howard goes, he will talk about his tour, and we'll open everything up to customers you can ask your questions live if you'd like. I'd really just like to extend a thank you to everyone who joined us for this event. Ramon, who it's now 1 a.m. in Spain, I believe. And he chose,
Yeah,
he
right
decided,
now it's 1, yeah.
Yeah, he did this.
Oh, no, I'm waiting. 1 a.m. Yes, here it's 1 a.m. now.
1 a.m. I know when I was in Spain that the dinners didn't start until 9.
It's okay.
You know, Ramon is an excellent axe thrower too.
Well, we just so appreciate you taking the time to be with our customers. This was one of our biggest tastings, and so we really appreciate it. Paco, who's in Tennessee right now, I thought the wines all showed wonderfully, and we will do a follow-up email to everybody with the recording of the tasting, with the cheese pairings, with the wines and the special prices. But I do think, I mean, all the wines showed beautifully tonight, and I hope everyone else agrees. And a really big thank you to Howard, who a funny story with him is when he retired, I was actually hired as his replacement, and I was a 24 or 25-year-old coming out and had very little knowledge and didn't realize who I was replacing, and obviously could not replace him. And then Howard's retirement, instead of actually retiring, he decided to open this empire of importing wines and these fantastic wines that Calvert Woodley carries. And the Ramon Canals bubbles, the Cavas, do really, really wonderfully in the store. And then he has a lot of fantastic wines. The Chivite just arrived into the store probably a month or so ago. The Trus is something that we carry regularly now because of him. So it's just wonderful that we have had, we're able to have him and continue to have him as a part of our team. But Ramon, thank you so much. And Paco, thank you so much for joining the tasting. I'll turn it back over to Howard to talk a little bit about his tour that is very, very popular, that he does yearly. And then we can open up to all customers if you'd like to ask questions. So Howard, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Well, for the last 10 years, with the 2-year hiatus for the pandemic, I have taken a group of people on a tour of Spain. When I first started, it was a wine tour. Now I have had more than one person tell me it's not just a wine tour, it's a food tour, because of the incredible Michelin-starred restaurants that are part of the tour. It's a 2-week tour that starts here in Galicia and heads all the way over to the Basque Country, through the north of Spain. This area is called España Verde, green Spain, because it rains so frequently there. So far, we've been lucky that it hasn't rained when we've been through there. The French border is here, and sometimes we visit Ribera, which is, you can walk across the street and you're in France. From here in the north, we've traveled to Rioja, to Jaguaria, and other towns, Logroño and Aro, and spend a couple days in the Rioja area tasting wines from Rioja. Then to Burgos, which is the provincial capital of Castilla y León, which is where Ribera del Duero is. And finally to, before we head south, Ribera del Duero is part of that tour, of course. And then we stop in on the way to Madrid in Segovia. And we end up in Madrid, which used to be at the Ritz in Madrid, but the Ritz closed down for 2 years during the pandemic, and they have opened up as an all-suite hotel that's way out of our price range. So this is a 2-week tour that I have, I do it for 10 years. I think I know about it, but every year I go, I enjoy it even more because there's more to see. We charter a boat to go to the mussel harvesting grounds here in Galicia. And it's just been a wonderful experience for me and all of the basically almost 300 people that I've taken to Spain over the years, a lot of whom have been with me more than one time. So if you're interested, there are 2 ways to find out about it. hfrito@verizon.net is my personal email that you're welcome to send questions to, and I will answer you. And you can go on the internet and find howardswinetour.webs.com, which will outline the tour. Now this year it's sold out, and we haven't really begun the 2023 tour yet, but we will shortly. And you can pretty much judge from 2022 that it is what pretty much the same. So I'll turn it back over to Jen, and you can ask questions, etc. Okay.
Thank you, Howard. I'm going to stop the recording now, and if anybody would like to unmute themselves, they are able to do so and ask questions.
No questions. Wonderful experience, Jen.
Oh, good. So glad.
Oh,
Nice to see you, Arlene.
okay,
Yep.
so, okay. So what else?
Surrounding
Do I
them with
need
the
to get something else
Yeah,
here?
we're having Spanish dinner here. We're getting ready
We gotta
to
get-
tortilla.
More stuff. I think I can take this stuff forward now. All right.
If anybody else wants to.
All right, if anybody has any other closing words or questions, you have the floor.
The Chardonnay goes fantastically with shrimp cocktail.
It does, yeah. Anything that is seafood or something like that, it goes really well with it. Clams is to me like the best. I mean, that's personal opinion, but clams with kind of a green sauce with that Chardonnay, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised. I hadn't tried the Chardonnay since it just arrived, but it was, and our staff loved the Chardonnay. So it's, I was very surprised. It's really, really, really nice.
I mean, something that people usually do not expect from Spain is having a nice Chardonnay, because usually you can find like some that are inexpensive, that are nice and light and everything. And this one has a lot of complexity, and I think it's a really interesting wine to pair with a lot of different, mostly seafood, but it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it had nice body, but also it wasn't over the top. So it was a good mix of kind of a Burgundian Californian style. So I thought it was very good. So.
I went back to mute and there's a lot of noise.
No. Oh, you unmuted?
I unmuted to say hello to
Nelly,
Jen.
she got the
because-
cord. Grab her. Oh, no, she's here. Oh, she's doing everything here.
I think we can't see.
Are there any other questions from anybody else, or should we let everybody go on to their night?
Let me just add something. I truly appreciate I've gotten to be in this industry. This is now over 50 years. 50 years. And I still feel young because the wine keeps me that way. Wine and peanut butter. That's my secret to life.
You look great, Howard.
And I just hope you all enjoyed it. And Paco, and especially Paco, because it's midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning, but you're young, you can handle it. And,
Ramon.
excuse me, Ramon and Paco.
I'm young too, kind of, but yeah, right.
A bientôt. Merci beaucoup. And thank you, Paco. And thank you, Ramon. It's a
Yes,
pleasure.
thank
you.
Thank you.
May I ask, do you distribute in Florida?
I do not, but perhaps Paco, the wines that Paco has and Ramon has are in.
Not the Chardonnay. Trus is distributed in Florida. Yeah.
Thank you.
But we can also ship to Florida.
Even better.
All right, there you go.
All right, well, I think we'll end it there. Thank you everyone again for joining us tonight, and we hope you
Thank
have
you.
a wonderful Friday night.
That was
Salute.
terrific. That
Thank
was
you.
great. Thank you, Ella, if you're still on. Thank you.
Cheers. I don't have-
Thank you. Cheers.
Shabbat shalom.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Ramon and Paco and Howard.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Howard. I see you, Paco.
Yes.
Bye.
You, Ramon. Cuídate.
Obviamente, crack.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.